All right. Thank you guys for joining us. My name is Michaela. I'm Admissions Guest Services Coordinator. We're here today with Katey Earle, our Director of Accessibility and Disability Services, and Avetta White, who's our Director of MICA Student Counseling Center. So I'm going to get us started off tonight. We're going to hear a little bit from each of them, get some more information, and then there'll be an opportunity to do a Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, feel free. There's a Q&A tab at the bottom here. You can drop your questions in there, or you can drop them in the chat. I'll be pulling them aside so that once we've gotten through some of that info, we can follow back up with some of those specific questions and make sure we get everything addressed. So to get us started, I'm going to have Katey take it away.
Okay, and I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. Can you see the right screen? Is it all blue? It says accessibility and disability services. Are we good?
That's great.
Okay, perfect. So we said, I'm Katey Earle, Accessibility and Disability Services. We're located in Bunting on the first floor. Okay, there we go. So I'm Katey Earle. I'm the Director of Accessibility and Disability Services. I use she, her pronouns. We have a rather small staff. It's me and my learning specialist, Franny Werdemer, who is the Student Learning and Accessibility Specialist. If you've been emailing us over the course of the summer, you've likely kind of gotten responses from one of us. We are usually here Monday through Friday, answering all your questions and sending you information. Franny also uses she, her pronouns. So basically, I'm going to go over a lot of questions. I know there were a bunch of questions that came in. I'm going to try and answer them all with my slides, but just a bit of background information regarding ADS and compliance, because our office is governed by both federal law, state law, and lots of other local ordinances. So under federal law, U.S. colleges and universities are responsible for providing reasonable accommodations to qualified students with disabilities. MICA defines disability as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, so things like speaking, walking, concentrating, sleeping. ADS ensures that MICA's programs, activities, and services are accessible and in compliance with the Americans with Disability Act as amended to the ADAAA and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. These are a little bit different laws than what you're coming in from, coming into as a secondary student. As a secondary student, you're under IDEA and you're under the Free and Appropriate Public Education Act, which is a little bit different. ADS reviews academic and housing accommodation requests. There were lots of questions about how do I register my ESA? How do I get information about housing accommodations? That all goes through our office. We also work with pretty much every other area of the college, depending on what your student needs are. So because the way your disability impacts you, it impacts you all across the campus. We work with facilities, we work with residence life, academic advising, enrollment services, student development, counseling, all your faculty and facilities. And we do this to address access and service issues related to students' educational experience. So pretty much everywhere you go, we're here to make sure that your access is available to you and that we can address any access barriers as needed. So what is an accommodation? These were a couple questions too. So MICA has a very specific, very long, compliant definition for an accommodation. I'm just going to read it. An accommodation is any reasonable modification or adjustment to a course, program, service, activity, or facility required for a student by virtue of the specific functional limitations of a disability to have equal access to MICA's programs and activities inside or outside of the classroom. An accommodation does not fundamentally alter curricular requirements, the essential learning goals and outcomes of a course, and/or the nature of a service or a program. So one of the changes that may come up as you're going from secondary to post-secondary school is the kind of idea of success. While we want all of you to be successful once you're here, and we have lots of ways to support that success, your disability accommodations are related to access. So when you're in secondary school and when you're in high school, they're definitely trying to make sure that you're successful. A little bit of that changes once you get into post-secondary. So we're looking to make sure that you have equal access to all of the peers that you're here with. There were questions about potential accommodations. I'm going to say this is the shortest list of accommodations that I put on these slides just for ease of access. Pretty much students request accommodations based on their disability, and because disabilities are so unique and they impact people in so many different ways, an accommodation request can be very different for students depending on who they are and what their disability is. But some that we see often are extra time for testing, note-taking assistance. We have a new software that we'll be using this year called Glean, which we are more than happy to teach people through. It's going to be a really great services for note-taking, interpreting services. So if you need transcription, if you need ASL or American Sign Language, we offer that. Reduced distraction testing. We have a small testing center in ADS's space. Speech to text. We have a program for which is Kurzweil, which is speech to text, and it's available to all students, whether they're registered with our office or not. Noise canceling headphones, preferential seating, access to medical devices, rest breaks. MICA's classes are very long, so I think rest breaks may be one of our most requested accommodation, single rooms, and emotional support animals. How do I know if I need accommodations? So if you have a learning disability or a neurocognitive disability of any kind, so that's dyslexia, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, dyspraxia, do you have a mental illness, anxiety, depression, PTSD, bipolar? This list is not exhaustive. These are just some examples. If you had an IEP in high school, if you had a 504 in high school, it's definitely something to think about. If you have a chronic illness, if you have EDS, POTS, diabetes, fibromyalgia, migraine, lupus, or a host of other autoimmune issues, you could register with us. Do you have a physical or sensory disability? So if you're deaf, blind, or you have a mobility impairment, those are all definite reasons that you want to reach out and see if you may need accommodations when you're here. The biggest thing that I try and convince students is, even if you think you may not need the accommodations when you get here, MICA is a very different place than perhaps where you were for high school. We suggest you register anyway. It's much better to have the accommodations in place and not need them than to suddenly need them and not have them be available to you. So chronic conditions can become disabling at any time. We definitely recommend that you register, even if you aren't sure you need them right away. So what are disability accommodations? The intent of accommodation is to provide disabled students equal access to all programs, academics, and facilities at MICA. Students can register for accommodations at any point during their career at MICA, but they are not retroactive. So that goes back to kind of what I was just saying. If you believe you're going to get into MICA and everything's going to be fantastic, you're not going to need testing and accommodations because maybe you won't have any exams the first semester, we still recommend that you register with us because you may have an exam later on. You may have a flare of your disability and you may end up needing an accommodation. And it takes some time to process this information with us. So you definitely want to get this taken care of well in advance if you can. Accommodations are determined on a case-by-case basis using the interactive process. There were a couple questions that came in that were like, what kind of accommodations can I get? What kind of accommodations might my student be qualified for? And again, it really depends. It depends on what your disability is. It depends on how that disability manifests in you, so what your functional limitations are. And it depends on what your classes are and what your activity is going to be on campus. Not everyone's disability impacts them in the same way, and not every class is the same. So what we suggest is definitely registering with us. And I'm going to tell you how to do that next. So to register, you go to our website, or you can click on the link down at the bottom of the screen. We have an accommodations request form. It's all online. It asks you who you are, asks you to complete information about how your disability impacts you, what accommodations you're requesting. If you had accommodations previously at another institution or in a high school, what are those accommodations? Then we ask you to submit documentation. That documentation, our documentation guidelines are also on our website. We have both general documentation guidelines, and then we have emotional support animal documentation guidelines. So please make sure you look at both of those. Realistically, we're looking for documentation that's going to speak to your current disability situation. So that means that if you have a static condition, something like you were diagnosed with dyslexia back when you were 9 years old and you have a neuropsychological assessment from then, submit that to us. If you have a history of accommodation since then, you have a 504 or an IEP plan, submit that to us. If you have a chronic illness, submit documentation to us from your medical provider. We're looking to see that you are disabled, what your functional limitations are, and what accommodations you're requesting. So from there, once we have the documentation, we will send you out kind of an initial eligibility letter. And from there, we'll ask you to schedule an appointment with us to kind of talk through everything that you're requesting and what we think you might need. We'd like to have these appointments to make sure everybody knows kind of what the situation is going to be at MICA once you get here. There's a lot of differences between high school and college, and there's a lot of differences coming into an art school. And so some of those accommodations that you may not have thought of, we want to make sure we think about with you. And then from there, we ask students to sign a release. The other part of this is that once you get into post-secondary, so in any college, university setting, you're now the responsible party. The student is the responsible party for a lot of this. And so you have to sign off on who we're allowed to share information with, including your faculty, including providers and caretakers, guardians at home, which is sometimes new for a lot of students who are taking on a lot of this responsibility at this time. If you register with ADS, you also have access to either me or Franny or both of us, and we have a peer tutor also who's here with us usually 1 day a week. And we offer kind of executive functioning support. So things like help with organization, time management, the general transition to post-secondary, working through how to email your professors, how to ask for a meeting to talk with them through an assignment, how to break down assignments. We do a lot of work with students who need to kind of figure out how to chunk down their assignments because they're given a syllabus and kind of just told to run with it. So we're both here for that. And if that's something that you register with us and you decide you'd like to meet with one of us, we can talk about that during an intake appointment to get you set up. We can meet with students weekly, bi-weekly, on a drop-in basis, however they feel it's going to be most beneficial to them. We have a copy of a flyer that I forgot to give to you earlier, Mahala, but I can send this out to anybody who requests it. Our email address is ads@mica.edu. And because I can only see myself and my giant blue screen, I can't tell if anyone is asking me questions, but I'm hoping we'll get to those later at the end. And just in the interest of time, there we both are again. That's Franny and I over on the right-hand side. And our contact information is ads@mica.edu. Our phone number is 410-225-2416, and we're in Bunting 110 on the first floor. And we have a really great space, and we're really excited to have you here and hopefully meet a lot of you very soon.
Thank you, Katie.
Stop
Yeah,
sharing.
so if you guys have any questions, we have the Q&A tab, we have the chat. We're basically going to grab them, hold on to them, and then at the end of our session here, we're going to do a Q&A with Katie and Avetta to go through anything that you have. So if you do have any questions about what Katie just said, feel free. You can write them down before you forget, and we can cover those once we get to the Q&A. But for now, I'm going to pass it over to Avetta and let them give us a little bit more information about our Student Counseling Center.
All right, good evening, everyone. So I'm going to test the chat, and if you all can indulge me for a few moments to let me know how you're feeling about coming to or starting college in the fall. If you all can put an emoji or put a word in the chat that reflects how you're feeling about going to college in the fall. Let's see.
I have a raised hand, which makes me worried that maybe the chat's not working.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering.
Yeah. All
Wondering
right, hold on. Yes, hold on. Let me try to fix this.
Okay.
I don't know if I can live Zoom, but if any of you want to say anything, I can let you get on the mic if you want. Oh, we got folks in the Q&A dropping their feelings.
Okay, good.
One person said, nervous as freak. Also, chat is disabled. I have a couple questions on there. We'll get to those. Yeah, I guess this is how we'll do it. Feel free to submit a question about how you're feeling. Sorry about that, guys. We're really new to this whole webinar thing.
That's okay. All right. Are you able to see my screen as well? Can you confirm? Are you able to see my share screen?
Yep, we can see your screen.
Okay.
Someone else just
Perfect.
said, I'm very excited, a little too excited.
Yes, I'm excited as well. Well, I want to go ahead and just virtually welcome you to MICA and the Student Counseling Center. As Mahala mentioned, I'm the director of the Student Counseling Center, and I just want to take a few moments to just give you some insights about our services, what we do, and our team. So we are the dream team here. Our mission is to provide effective, high quality, accessible, and culturally informed mental health services and outreach to you as MICA students. You can see that we are a direct team of 5, and come the fall semester, every beginning of the fall, we start our internship program where we'll be bringing on 2 clinical interns who will be a part of our team. And our goal is to directly make sure that we support the mental health needs of our students here at MICA, and to make sure that we also help your well-being. So for instance, as we go through this presentation, you will learn that even if you may not come to us directly through an individual path, which we also very much welcome for you to utilize, there are other outreach ways, other outreach services and modalities that we try to offer students, so that way we are able to touch you regardless of whether you are a direct client of the center. So in that vein, let's talk a little bit about the scope of services that we offer in the Student Counseling Center. As you noticed probably earlier, our team is comprised of licensed clinicians. And the reason why that's very important is so that we can provide the directive and a variety of services for you all as you may come into our center for more individualized care. And so some of the things that may come up in terms of the services that we offer, or the reasons why many of our students come to us, may relate to upsetting events that you may experience as a student or as you're coming into MICA, as it relates to grief, loss, just adjusting to the demands of college. Some of you may already come in with existing supports or existing diagnoses that we can support you with and need to navigate that. Some of you may be dealing with relationship or family problems as you come into MICA, or as you are a student. And then sometimes it's a matter of having some emotional crisis, or could even just be directly dealing with an array of mental health concerns. Our job is to make sure that we're able to provide you directive supports. And if it's something that's within or outside of the scope of what we offer, we do also offer directive referrals and have an array of relationships with community partners to make sure that you get the care and the services that you need. So our services here at MICA are free for you as a student. So if you're an enrolled student at the college, we provide free confidential services to you. And some of the things that we kind of look at as our 5 pillars of services to you as a student, as MICA, or as you enter into MICA, our focus is individual counseling or group services that we offer, group support. We also provide prevention and crisis support services. I mentioned this a moment ago that we also offer robust referral case management services. We also provide robust outreach and programming initiatives and services. And one of the other services that we offer that I'll talk a little bit more about is we also provide on-call counseling services. And that is particularly kind of a wraparound services that we offer to students of MICA, which is more considered like a 24/7 support. But in particularly, some of those director services after hours relate to campus mental health emergencies that may arise while you're a student here at MICA. So this just gives you kind of a brief overview of what are some of our 5 pillars of what our focus is. And our goal, of course, is to promote the psychological well-being of each of you in terms of helping you kind of enhance and enrich, your personal career and academic growth. And when we look at these different 5 pillars, I want to share with you our care model. And so when you come to MICA in the fall, we'll have an opportunity to actually talk to you much in depth about some of our services, how we can support you, some kind of fun, unique ways of us helping you customize your kind of like wellness plan as you're coming in to the college. But in terms of what our model looks like for services when you enter MICA is what we call our PATHS model. And PATH stands for Positive Action Towards Health. And it's kind of a inclusive model that helps support the different ways in which you as a student may need services. So for instance, one of the things, of course, that as clinicians, licensed clinicians, our main focus or main targeted area of service is always the individual care services. But we also understand within the individual care services that students are coming at different levels. Your needs may be different. The type of support and services that you might need or clinical scope that you might need may vary from student to student, but that is one of the pathways in which you can come into our center. And often that will start with our screening process that kind of is our non-committal, screening that allows us just to know information about, why is it that you want to visit us, or why is it that you may want to initiate service with us. And then from there, we can always determine what the goals are established for you. And we'll talk a little bit about initiating services in a moment. But when you look at the past model, we have individual care, we have the group clinical care path, and the group clinical care path is we do provide in-house clinical groups for the MICA community based on different topics. Last year, we focused on depression, ADHD, anxiety, and then we also had some support groups as well, which is another path that we offer that related to identity-based support groups to support our students. We had neurodivergent group, we had LGBTQ plus A group, we had a support group for international students, we had a support group for BIPOC students. So these are things that we're looking at to support you all as students. So therefore, you're not directly committed to any directive services, but the support groups are open to the MICA community for you to come in, and you can kind of choose what topic is most relevant for you or what is more applicable to you, or you can attend all of the support groups. We try to do it in a rotating schedule, so that way, if you do decide to do more than one support group, for instance, you're able to do that. And then, as I mentioned, in terms of the group clinical care path, that is more internal, so that way you have the privacy. It would be a closed group, and that would be an entryway or one entryway in terms of the direct services that we offer at the center. And then we have the guided care, and guided care is also kind of a directive service within our office, but it also helps provide more so directly your own kind of treatment self-care plan. So the guided care is designed really truly for short-term support. For instance, as you're coming in as a first-year student, it may be very helpful for you to say, you know what, I need to really look at how do I maintain wellness goals? How do I maintain self-care? Or, I have received therapy in the past and I just need some support in developing, just coping strategies or a plan in which how I can implement some of the skills that I may have already learned or developed previously. So there's different ways in which the guided care path can work, but it's designed for you to kind of have get assistance in developing a customized plan that you can go out and utilize on your own. And then it's up to you and that counselor who facilitates that guided path or the guided care plan for you to determine, okay, is follow-up necessary? Do you want to check in? But again, this helps provide a kind of a true preventive support service for you, as well as a self-care plan for you moving forward as a student at MICA. And then lastly, but not least, actually there's two other paths. So the on-campus programming that involves some of the collaborative support and resources that we have, some of the events that we do with our colleagues in the different student support service offices, as well as some of our directive support and outreach programs. So you'll see us on campus. We love to do various things, events relating to different causes on campus. Valentine's is one of those big features for us on our campus that many students are usually enjoy attending. But there are an array of different ones that we have cupcakes for a cause. These are all different things that we like to do just so that you know that we're here and to provide awareness and support. And then we also very active as another piece on social media. So during the academic year, you'll see many posts on Instagram. We post a lot on the MICA app just to kind of make sure that you are informed of what's going on campus, or for us to just send you a positive note or just some awareness information, so that way you're constantly have access to various resources and support. And then one of the last paths of our path model is the community care path. And that relates to the pillar that I mentioned about referrals and case management. Under our community care path, that is also an internal service where you would come to us in the center to, you may already identify, or as you come for us for individual care, you may be referred to one of these other paths. But under the community care, you may say, what, I'm specifically looking for a psychiatrist, or I'm specifically looking for a specialized therapist who provides, and whatever that is, we're able to support and determine, okay, what resources, what referrals may be helpful for you, or what more long-term treatment, or what specialized inpatient, outpatient treatment that may be supportive for you based on your needs. And that is all facilitated under our community path. And so these are just some things that you'll become more familiar as you enter into campus at the beginning of the year, such as orientation that I just mentioned. You'll get more information what it looks like. You'll see us promoting different aspects of our different paths or services that we offer for you all as students. And so one of the things that relate to the pillars that we talked about, where we mentioned about crisis and preventive support services. Last year, we launched our MICA Admission, which is our 24/7 support line that is there, definitely designed for you to utilize at any time of the day. It's not, you're not committed to the center by using this particular service, but it's there to allow you to be able to determine when you might need someone to speak to. So this doesn't involve directly you being in a crisis. You can very much call this if you feel like you're in crisis or having a mental health crisis. However, it may be that you're really having a difficult time. You may find yourself feeling lonely as a result of transitioning from home or being away from home, or you may find that you're dealing with different concerns or issues with relationships that you may be in as once you're here on campus and you just need someone to talk to. Our 24/7 support line is there to provide a counselor who can kind of help you or support you in the gamuts of whatever may be that, that prompting topic that you're contacting the 24/7 line for. And what it does is it also serves as a triage. So if there is some higher level of care that's needed or immediate care, they know how to contact the center or contact campus safety or contact any, surrounding community provider if in fact it's an high level risk, so that way we make sure that every MICA student is supported and taken care of. So that is a service that you become, or as you come into MICA in the fall, this is a service that's available for you at any point of time while you're here. And then one of the things that I also wanted to kind of go over a little bit is about confidentiality. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, our team, we're comprised of licensed clinicians. And one of the most important things for you to understand as it relates to that is the notion of confidentiality. So that way you know that when you come to us, we are very much a confidential resource and support service. So in counseling, when you're looking at confidentiality, it is voluntary. So you have the right to decline or accept receiving services at any time. There are times when you may be referred to us by another campus support office, and then we will be definitely available to support any initial concerns, questions that are presented from that referral if you come visit us. But again, it is up to you whether you decide to continue or whether you want to discontinue receiving services from our office. Also, as licensed social workers, counselors, psychologists, we are required by law and ethical guidelines to maintain privacy and confidentiality. And so this is definitely there to protect you as students and also for in adherence to our license in the state of Maryland. And so therefore, when you're looking at things like confidentiality and release of information, only you can give us written permission to release or disclose information to outside parties. So that could be, let's say, another provider. So if you want us to help, let's say, support in a referral that we may have discussed in a session, you have to give us sign a release for us to have that exchange, for us to exchange any information related to you. Or if you want us to contact or communicate with another support office, you have to provide us a release or a release of information for us to be able to, interface with another office or another person about your care. So this is some of the things that we also will talk about when you first come in to initiate services with us, but this just gives you an idea of what confidentiality looks like. So for instance, you may have a parent or what have you that, who just in general wants to call about your care. As you're entering as a college student, you are considered as an adult. And so therefore, there wouldn't be any additional exchanges by default of someone saying that they're a relative or what have you. Confidentiality is maintained in the privacy of what is discussed with us. There are some exceptions to confidentiality that often are rare in terms of breaching that, but it is based on the, assessing danger to self or others. So if you are at imminent risk to yourself or to others, that is when confidentiality may be waived, just in terms of providing and making sure we're providing that directive care support. Also, when you're looking at subpoenas, which could be court mandated, those are also situations where exceptions may apply to confidentiality. And if the student or you as a student or client disclose abuse of someone who's unable to protect themselves, that is something in which we are obligated by law to report. So these are the rare exceptions in which confidentiality can be breached, but as you can see, it does not relate to just any random outside parties being privy to information if you have not given us that permission. And so lastly, when you're looking at more formally in terms of initiating services, we try our best to make it seamless as possible for you. So that way there's multiple ways that you can enter into the Student Counseling Center. The first step is always just sending us an email. Mahala has put down our email address as well as our website information. All you need to do is contact us via email. Also on the website, we have our phone number if that's also preferable. And then when we start up in the fall, we also have open office hours for you at least to come in to maybe initiate a scheduling. We don't have open office hours in terms of sessions. Like you can't, we have what we call drop-in sessions, and that allows you the opportunity on certain times of the week for you to come in without an appointment. But if you did want to visit just to schedule, you're welcome to come in anytime for that. But all of our directive appointments are scheduled. So that's why the email will actually be the quickest and most efficient way to get you on the books for scheduling for your initial screening. So when we first talked about the PAP screening, one of the paths that was listed there was listed under the PAPS model was the screening path. And that basically is what would be your initial appointment. So as you're first initiating services here at the Counseling Center, make sure to, you'll be signing up for a PATH assessment, which is a screening, a 30-minute screening that, as I mentioned earlier, allows us to kind of get some basic information in terms of what brought you to the center and how we can support you based on the various in-house services that we offer to you as a student. And as I mentioned also in that initial screening, we will go over the confidentiality. There will be informed consent that you would need to read and complete, and there'll be some assessment form for you to complete as well, just so that we have a good picture and understanding of like what it is that brings you here and who you are as a student or as a client of the center. And then also during this screening time, you would tell us a little bit about just like what are some of those presenting concerns or issues that that are coming up for you, which you may be interested in accomplishing in counseling. And then if it's appropriate, referrals may also be the option as well. You can let us know if referrals is something that you're seeking as a result of that initial screening. That is something that can briefly be discussed during that initial screening. And then at the end of the screening, as you're, again, this is all about initiating services, then it's your decision whether or not you want to continue. Okay. And as I noted earlier, there's no obligation for you to, become a client of the center, but we definitely welcome for you to be a part and utilize the services that will best support and suit you based on your presenting concerns. And then at that point too, we will look at the scheduling in terms of moving forward. What would be the series of sessions that we may facilitate with you? as well as what may be the focal areas for counseling moving forward. So all of this is kind of held, or all this is discussed in our initial screening process for you to kind of determine, again, what services that are needed for you and what we're able to offer within the scope of our office. So this just gives you some information too in terms of where we are. So we're located in what's considered the Wellness Center building, right behind the MICA store in terms of location. You can contact us, as I mentioned, these different modalities. You can call us. You can send us an email, which is the counseling@mica.edu email. You can visit our website, mica.edu, and then /SCC. It's very easy to access, and we're constantly updating it. So when it comes to early August, you'll be able to see, postings of our full team. Our interns will be starting in August, so you'll get a chance to see the clinical interns, what their profiles are, what they have to offer, and the services that they'll be offering you as students here. I mentioned about our Instagram. This is how you can access us via Instagram. And our office hours are typically Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We close at noon every day of the week for lunch. And then we do have a late hour, and typically that late hour is up to 7, and it's on Tuesdays. But we say subject to change this because in the case that we may end up changing by the time we get to August, if it's possible that we're changing that date or what have you, that would be something that would be announced during the start of the year. But typically we hold late hours on Tuesdays. And then I mentioned to you about drop-in hours every week. The plan, usually our drop-in hours are 2 to 3:30, Monday through Friday. And again, that offers you the opportunity to walk in or to drop in with no obligation. Again, you might say, you know what, I just want to see a counselor, and then we're able to see you on the spot. So that is offered for students at any point in time while you're here in MICA. And again, it does not commit you as a client of the center, but it is a service, a direct service that can be offered to you in the moment during those times of the week. So I thank you. I don't have, I'll wait for the Q&A if there's any other additional questions, but I so look forward to meeting you all. You'll be seeing Kay and I both an array of orientations and other things as you come into MICA. I hope MICA is your choice, for for you to attend. So we'll be happy to provide more services and support. And I'm gonna go ahead and pass it down to Mahala to open up the Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Avetta. So we're going to start with the Q&A. I saw a couple of requests in the chat for getting a copy of the slides. So if it's good with the two of you, if you could just send me the slide files. I have the emails of everyone who registered. We can just make sure that everyone has that info so you don't have to worry about writing it down and things like that. All right, we have a couple other questions in the chat here. Let's see what's going on. So it looks like we have 3 open questions. One of them says, my son is on medication for depression. Is your office able to prescribe medication or refer us to a psychiatrist that accepts MICA insurance?
So one of the things that we do partner with our student health services when it comes to those who have existing medication. However, we're typically going to look at providing or helping support find a psychiatrist, and within that referral, we do look at the type of insurance. So if you do have MICA insurance, we then will go ahead and try to find a provider through that, as well as kind of what is the best match or the best support for them. So yes, we do provide directive referrals in that case, but we directly do not prescribe medication within our office.
And we have another question here from Vanessa. It says, is there a limit on how many sessions a student gets? Vanessa, were you referring to counseling services or referring to the sessions with ADS here? We can answer for both too.
Yeah, I think usually that's a question with counseling. We consider our model is considered short-term support. So we don't have session limits in the sense of us saying you only have 5, you have 2, but what we have is a framework that kind of focus on what brings you here, what's the level of concern or need that you have, and then that helps us make a determination of how to support you as a student in the moment or throughout the course of that academic year. But we do consider ourselves roving. So although we're short term, which means that you would not necessarily be committed to, for instance, 4 years. It means that if you, for instance, reoccurring presenting concerns come up or reoccurring things happen, you always are welcome to reenter back to the screening process that we mentioned with the past throughout the time that you're here at MICA. Okay, so the focus would always first be short term, and that would be determined between you and that counselor. But then if other things, come up later in your time at MICA, it's still a roving door where you can come in and we can reassess what supports are needed for you or what referrals in terms of more intensive long-term services, or if there's, again, as I mentioned earlier, specialists, psychiatry, things of that nature, we can also provide that support as well. Good question.
I don't think it was in relation to us, but just in case, if you're registered with us and you are meeting with us, typically students meet with us once a week, but they don't have to. And that's, again, very much based on availability. So we always say to students, if you think you are going to want to meet with us weekly, definitely get on our calendar right away, because it's really based on first come, first serve in our office.
All right, we have another question here from Jessica. It says, can a parent call in to request a welfare check? How does that work regarding confidentiality?
So what would happen is if someone requests a welfare check, you can provide that information and we do facilitate courtesy follow-ups. However, you just would not be informed of how that intervention is facilitated. So as a parent, if you send an email saying I'm concerned about A, B, C, and D, you can bring that in. And also I would suggest to bring that to campus safety's attention. They also serve kind of as a triage to also bringing in who they feel is the appropriate person, for based on the request. But for us directly, you can send that and then we would provide some form of courtesy follow-up to the student if we have the right information. But again, we can't respond or disclose to say yay or nay or this intervention was facilitated. But we can definitely take heed to it and respond to based on the concern. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, sounds good. We have Helen in the chat saying, my daughter will be starting in the fall. Can we visit your office in July, or are you closed during the summer? We want to come to the area and find her some local doctors.
So that's for both offices. So we are open throughout the entire summer, but we are offering limited services because some of our team is on 10-month. So we're not providing our full services. So it's always good to probably call, and again, it doesn't mean it has to be way in advance, but just to call if you wanted to say, hey, I just would like to stop by or like to meet, a member of the team. If you can give us a courtesy call or email, and then we'd be happy to, do a quick hello introduction for one of us who is available.
I would say the same thing for our office. Typically, we are here, but we also have several other programs that are running during the summer, and so we often are kind of booked up in appointments. So definitely give us a call and let us know ahead of time when you're coming. The other thing to be aware of is generally all of the offices, all the buildings down here are locked, and security won't necessarily let you in unless you have an appointment. So it's definitely better to call ahead and make sure that the staff is there and able to meet with you that day.
And another thing about that too, admissions is here to facilitate that kind of thing, especially when it comes to like getting settled to campus. So if you want to ever just like you're coming for a tour or something like that, and you want to like see like, can I, while I'm on campus, set something up, we can definitely help you figure out who to ask, get you in contact with people like Katey or Avetta, make sure that, you get set up while you're on campus. So we're happy to help facilitate that kind of thing as well. All right. Do we have any other questions? I'm going to drop everyone's email in the chat again, just in case. But if you have any last things you're still wondering about, please feel free to drop it in now. We got about 5 more minutes, so we've got precious time.
There was one question in the Q&A, and
Oh, okay.
when I hit enter sometimes before I know
Oh,
what I'm doing.
okay.
And it was about emotional support animals. So what I can say about them is, I don't know if we put that in the chat the emotional support animal policy and documentation guidelines, but what I
Send
can
it
think
right
about
now.
okay, perfect. Is that is something that you register for. You need to have a verified disability and then submit documentation to us. And then what we tend to do is still have that intake appointment, because sometimes you don't request any other accommodations and we feel like you might actually need some. And so we want to have that conversation and make sure, you know, do you need academic accommodations to go with your housing accommodations? If you're approved for an ESA, what happens then is you have our intake appointment, you sign our release form so that we can share that information over with housing. And then housing has a whole separate set of information or an appointment with you. You have to fill out some housing documents that ensure that the animal is healthy, that it's vaccinated. They keep all that information on file. They also keep an emergency contact form. So in case something were to happen to you, who's going to be responsible for your ESA if there's an emergency. They also have you fill out kind of an ESA agreement form. So where the animal is allowed to be, what the standards are for the animal, that it has to be healthy, that it has to be maintained appropriately, that you have to take good care of it, that it has to be in good health, it has to be house trained, all of those things where the animals can be cleaned, where waste has to be disposed of. They go through all of that with you. So you first have to register with ADS to ensure that your accommodation is reasonable and necessary. From there, you sign a release. We share that you have an ESA with housing, and then you set up an appointment with housing to kind of do all the maintenance work of like, how is this ESA going to integrate into campus and where is it allowed to go? And confirm that you have all your vet docs.
All right. We got one raised hand. I'm gonna let them jump on the mic from Vanessa.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, awesome. So about the housing accommodation, the housing accommodation is only if you have an emotional support animal that you're taking, or are there other housing accommodations?
So an emotional support animal is an animal that is approved to live in MICA's housing, because MICA's housing is no animals. There's no animals allowed in MICA's housing. So what the emotional support animal does is it allows, or an accommodation for an emotional support animal is it breaks that policy, and it allows a student with a disability to bring that emotional support animal with them because they need it in order to live on campus. MICA, unlike other places, also has a pet policy, which is not applicable in the dorms. So this does not apply to housing in any way, what I'm about to say. However, in certain areas on campus, students, faculty, staff are allowed to bring pets to campus. To register a pet on campus, you have to talk to environmental health and safety and register that animal with them. And they do a little test to make sure that the animal is safe to be on campus. It gets a little, I think, green tag that it has to wear when it's on campus. And then it can go to pet approved zones. I know that counseling is not a pet approved zone, so you cannot bring a pet into counseling. You could bring a pet over to ADS. You can also, should I even go here? There's also service animals. There's a whole different boat. Service animals are only dogs, usually, rarely they're a miniature pony. I've yet to see one. I would love to see a miniature pony on campus. But they're really dogs. And those are under the ADA, and they are trained to do a particular task. I don't know that I'm answering your question because you were asking about like housing accommodations in general. So the only animal that's allowed on campus housing would be an emotional support animal that is approved through ADS. There are other housing accommodations. So students can request, I'm trying to think of the things that people request. They request single rooms. Some people need access to an elevator. Some people need to be on a ground floor. Some people need an accessible shuttle. Am I going in the right direction?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Okay. So there are other housing accommodations besides the emotional support
Yes,
animal.
definitely.
Okay. Yes, that was my question.
Okay.
And I can find all of it on the student housing accommodations or website, or
if you're looking to register for a specific housing accommodation, meaning disability accommodation, if that's what you're talking about, I would go to their ADS website, and then I would just click through and go to, I think it's in one of the chat somewhere just to register with us. And then I would read our documentation guidelines. So if you're looking to like register for a single room, you would just fill out that information online and then submit a letter from one of your providers that says you need access, like in order to live on campus, you need a single room for whatever the reason is, or whatever other accommodation you're requesting.
I see. Okay. And then so for the emotional support pet, it's also through you, correct? If I understood correctly?
So the
Yes.
first step is registering with us. Yes, that would be the
Yes.
first
Okay.
step. And then once you're approved for the housing accommodation, we share that with ResLife, and then ResLife takes it from there.
I see. So in the appointment that we have with you once or she already applied, I believe. So then you're going to get back to her and say, okay, this is the appointment virtually because we're not there. And then that's when you're going to discuss all those things, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We review
So-
all of our part, and then there's a separate part with ResLife where they
Okay.
kind of have, because they need the vet form on file over in their office, and they want to make sure that students know exactly where they can go. And we just don't know all the ins and outs of the spaces over there.
Yeah, of course. Okay. That sounds good. Thank you for that
Sure.
answer.
Yeah,
Appreciate
sure.
it.
All right, and it looks like there's a question in the chat. It's pretty similar. It says, my daughter is interested in having a private room due to ADHD. We start the process with your office first and document her disability, correct? And then how does it work? Does your office connect with housing? I'm pretty sure we covered. Is there anything else they would need to know for that?
All the same things. So you definitely need to register with us first. You would need to fill out our online form, submit the documentation. Please know, everyone, there's a lot of you. We're really excited to have so many of you registering with us ahead of time. And there's only 2 of us. So sometimes it takes us a good week, 2 weeks to get back to students just because there's a lot of information to review. But we will communicate back with you and let you know all the steps along the way. But generally, you register, you send the documentation, we get back to you, you have an appointment with us. And then if there's a housing accommodation that's going to be implemented, we send that information to ResLife so they know. And then we suggest, especially if it's we require, if it's ESA, for you to talk to ResLife. And then we suggest for a lot of other accommodations that you connect with ResLife just to make sure that they have a full picture and make sure that everything's implemented before you get here.
All right, so we're running short on time. I do have one last question from the chat. We're just gonna take care of this one and then I'll post the emails again. You can send whatever you need to send. But someone asked, not sure if it was mentioned or not, but I'm curious about the depth of your services. What forms of therapy do you provide? Is it mostly talking based or solution oriented? Do you provide other options? They list a couple options. Sorry if this was already answered. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I mentioned about the screening process, that helps also determine what is the appropriate counselor to assign you with. And so each therapist has their own kind of approach of how they would, different modalities that they would use based on what the presenting concerns are. So for instance, again, if there's some specialized treatment that you are seeking, that may be something that we're looking to refer you with. But if it's related to, us, if it is solution focused that you're looking for, talk therapy, CBT, things of that nature, that is within the framework of what we offer and support and provide students. And then again, if there are some specialized care services, then we can also talk about that in sessions that then will give you the proper referral for a specialist or for more long-term treatment. So, but yeah, definitely feel free to contact us at the email address that Mahala provided you all if you have any more directed questions about our services. Good question.
All right, I just dropped all the links in the chat for everybody. I'm also going to email out a copy of the slides so that everyone can have that information. Again, if you need anything from us, I put our 3 emails down here. So feel free to reach out. We're here to answer questions and get you guys settled and ready to move to campus. So yeah, thank you guys for joining tonight. Excuse my cat who's meowing. But yeah, if you guys need anything else, just feel free to let us know.
Have a great night.